Welcome to Founder Tactics, a podcast about entrepreneurs and the communities that shape them. I am your host, Julia Lucchiti, and today I had the opportunity to interview Michael Ashley, also known as MASH. MASH is an adjunct professor at San Jose State University in California, and he also launched and operates the school's business incubator program. He's a serial entrepreneur with absolutely fascinating stories on how he exited some of his startups. And we talked about life as an entrepreneur, how the founder of Netflix became one of his mentors, and just the excitement of working with students and so much more. This was really a fantastic conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it. This episode is sponsored by Quest Workspaces. Quest Workspaces offers sophisticated workspaces that promote connection, accomplishment, and fun. Founded in 2010, Quest operates 14 premium locations across South Florida and New York City. These prestigious locations provide all types of businesses with flexible workspaces that include both private and team offices, meeting rooms, co-working memberships, and a virtual office solution. Start working from Quest today by visiting questworkspaces.com and mention the Founder Tactics podcast to receive a free day of co-working in any of their 14 locations, up to 2 months in free rent on a private office, and 1 month free virtual office upon sign up.
Thank you for having me.
Have you been on podcasts before? Or
I have.
First one?
I've been on a couple, and this was way back in the day when they were just audio. Telephones, you would get on a telephone, you'd actually have a telephone conversation with somebody, an interview, and then it would show up on someone's audio podcast.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that was a thing. Is that like back in the day, like beyond my time?
I know. It was actually, it was the old podcast audio only phenomenon, with people becoming journalists and interviewers and going to conferences and shows, and they'd show up with their little, audio microphone in your face and stuff like that. And then later on, they'd send you a link and they'd be like, look, you're on our podcast.
Oh, that's super cool. And nowadays we have these like fancy microphones and elaborate setups to do a podcast, right? When things can be so simple.
Yeah. And actually, I love this because I love being able to like actually see you and feel like I'm, in the room talking to you.
Yeah.
Being on the phone is a little weird.
For sure. And I think having like in-person conversations is the best experience because there's so many more like elements of engagement that come into play. But honestly, I was really excited to invite you onto the podcast and have this conversation with you because we're hundreds, maybe thousands of miles away from each other. And, hopefully soon we'll have the opportunity to connect in person. But I guess for people who are listening, it would be cool for them to know how we met. So both me and Mash, we mentor on a network called the Venture Mentoring Team. And as we were both onboarding onto this mentor network, there was training and meetings that were happening, and we were in the same cohort, and we were super vocal, very similar in personality, and he had such cool experience to share and a background that really intrigued me, and we ended up connecting one-on-one, and then, when he saw that I published my podcast, reached out, wanted to learn about it. And so I decided to invite him on so that we could have this conversation. So, Mash, I would love to start by perhaps you giving a introduction on who you are and what do you do?
That sounds good. And I am unashamedly stealing everything I can from your podcast because it is so cool and you are so organized and I love it. So we want to try and do a video podcast similar to what you're doing at the incubator that I'm running. So I'll talk about that in a minute too. But okay, my name is Michael Ashley, and everyone calls me Mash, like mashed potatoes. And I am the launch director at the San Jose State University SpartUp Incubator program. And this is the very first time that we've ever had an incubator program like this at San Jose State University, which is the oldest public university in California. So it's a pretty cool setup that we have and the opportunity to affect some really important groups of people who are coming through the educational system and starting to explore entrepreneurship and the world of startups, So that's pretty cool. But I also am the founder of a small company myself called Foclarity, and hopefully we'll dive into that. And I'm also, an entrepreneur from years and years ago, having done all kinds of fun little projects, made some money here and there, failed a lot, had one really great acquisition, which was life-changing. So hopefully get a chance to share a lot of these stories with you and dig into them. Yeah.
Yes, there is so much that I want to cover on every aspect that you just shared. I think us talking about students is really important. I'm going to share that. I'm going to wait for that bit to be a little bit later in our conversation. I want to talk about your current company, and I want to talk about how you got into entrepreneurship. So let's rewind the tape of life and go back to when you decided to become an entrepreneur, because you have a really unique story around this. And, your first company, I can't remember the name of it. Please remind me the name.
Well, there were lots of little tiny companies. Actually, I think it may not be as unique as you think it is. When you talk to entrepreneurs and you go back to like high school and elementary school, they were doing stuff like, arbitrage, gum arbitrage, out of the lockers. Like, I used to think I was unique. Like, oh, my mom taught me how to go and buy gum for 25 cents, at the grocery store, and then bring it to school and break it into individual pieces and sell every individual piece for 25 cents, And I remember just bringing bags, like paper bags, like lunch bags full of Hubba Bubba at the time. Right? It was Hubba Bubba was this gum that came in 5 packs, right? And I would keep it in my locker, and everyone knew that they could come to my locker and they could buy gum, and it was just a quarter. They could pay for a piece of gum for a quarter. That meant that every package of gum, I made $1, and it was just the coolest feeling to know, like, I could go out and actually, you know what? My mom bought all the gum. I never paid for anything. I think she loved watching me do this kind of crazy stuff. So that was probably the first experience I had of, taking something, adding value by bringing it to school. And then one day at school, actually, the funniest thing happened is I was selling gum out of my locker, and one of the teachers came up to me and grabbed me and said, "You're coming with me to the office and bring that bag." And I was like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" They thought I was selling drugs. And so they brought me to the office, and they all of the people, the principal, the vice principal, everybody was there, and they were like, "Pour out that bag. What's in that bag?" And I poured it out, and it was all gum, and they all were like totally laughing, like, "Oh my God, we thought you were selling drugs." And I was like, "No, I'm just selling gum." And they just, I just thought it was funny. But yeah, that was probably my first experience of like, how do you take something, add value, and make money with it?
Yeah, so your mom already instilled that attitude in you of, experimenting with those things. And your mom was actually an inspiration for Fast Pencil. Was that what it was called, Fast Pencil?
Yeah. Fast Pencil was the actual company I started. So one more story about my mom, actually.
Yeah,
I'm such a dork. I love my mom so much.
I love talking about moms. They play actually a phenomenal role in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, a huge role. And your family does too. And the encouragement that they have for you to go and take risks and fail and not worry about the consequences of failing. I think that was a huge thing that I got from my parents, because when I was in high school, I went to high school up in Washington State, right? Washington State, very conservative, Spokane, Eastern Washington. And I wanted to wear shorts. I was from Los Angeles, so I wore shorts to school. They kicked me out, told me to go home. And I said, "You can't kick me out for wearing shorts." And they're like, "Yeah, you can't wear shorts to school." And so I said, "Well, what's the definition of a short? Like, they were like, "Well, anything that like goes over your knees." And so my mom and I designed, my mom's a little Vietnamese, 4'11" Vietnamese woman. And she told me about these things they had back there called clam diggers. And clam diggers, you wore them like pants, but they were short so that you didn't get them wet, when you were tromping around and you're catching clams. So we designed these Hawaiian print, baggies at the time. This was back in the 80s. And they were clam diggers. Basically, they went just past your knee. But they were like shorts, but they were super colorful and big baggies and everything. And I wore them to school, and they tried to kick me out. And I'm like, nope, these are pants. You can't kick me out. And so they said, oh man. So then all my buddies at school were like, dude, you got to make me clam diggers. So we started a little company called Surfing Samurai, and we made clam digger, baggies for everybody in high school, and they all loved it. So my mom did play a big role in helping me to understand, like, how do you find a problem? How do you overcome it? How do you create value? How do you, sell stuff? And so it is kind of perfect that the first company that I started out of my MBA program was actually to help my mom solve a problem.
Yeah.
So Fast Pencil was created actually because my mom had a problem, and I was like, I'm good, son. I'm going to fix it.
Yeah. And how cool. Your mom was essentially like a co-founder. She had the role of like a co-founder of, in a sense, in your elementary days, right? She was like, let's do this together. I'll sew the pants. I'll buy the candy. She was always there being a support to facilitate that happening. So it's interesting that it came full circle that through Fast Pencil, you then thought, hey, this is another way that I can help my mom.
Yeah. Well, the story of Fast Pencil is kind of interesting because I did not want to start a company. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to start a company. What happened is my mom, actually, I had some kids, right? And so my daughter was young. I think she was maybe 10 or 11 years old or something like that. And my mom told me, she said, I wrote a book that I want to read to your daughter, but I want to get it published. It's a story called Butterfly Girl, and it was kind of about her and her immigration to the United States, not having any family, and the whole sort of story of, what it's like to go and do something on your own. And I said, oh, you know what? You should send it to publishers, and the publishers they'll publish it, and then, you'll be able to like read the story to my daughter. And so she went and actually tried all of the traditional routes and sent her manuscript to publishers and everything. And then she called me up like 6 months later, like they all said it's horrible. They said they're not going to publish it. They said they don't, it's not going to happen. And so I said, this was early 2000s, and I was in graphic design at the time, and I knew how to make stuff. I could make a book. We could self-publish it, right? And back in those days, you would make a book and you would send it to a printer, and you would have to order like at least 1,000 copies. I mean, it was a substantial investment to go through the whole self-publishing thing, not to mention like getting an ISBN and finding distributors. I mean, it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
But I did it. I did it for my mom. I helped her kind of create this book and come up with the whole thing. It was called Butterfly Girl. And we published it. I had some copies delivered to the house, and it was Christmas time. It's 2007, and she was crying. Oh my God, it's the best day of my life! And she was able to like read the story to my daughter, which was fantastic. And then what happened though was all the cousins and brothers and the sisters and everybody that was over for Christmas said, hey, guess what? I have a book in me. I want to publish a book. Will you help me publish a book? And I was like, no way. There's no way. There's got to be an easier way to do this than the way we did it. At the time, there wasn't. And so that's why we built Fast Pencil. We built it because my mom, needed to publish a book, and nobody was going to do it. And then, there's a million other moms out there, 100 million other moms, actually billions of people out there who think they have a book in them and will never publish.
So what was the business model, essentially?
So it was an online writing and publishing platform where you could click a button and you could distribute your book anywhere in the world through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Baker and Taylor, and then you could order your book one at a time, which was a new print-on-demand model that came out. So I think this is important, actually, to say, if for anybody who's looking at a startup opportunity, what happened was this crazy convergence of technology. And it just happened to be that in 2007, the Kindle had just come out. There was not even an iPad yet. The idea of print on demand was just emerging because, traditional printers, they had a huge setup cost and they had to run 1,000, 10,000 copies to even make any money. So this new printing technology came out called print on demand. And then the internet happened. So we had digital distribution. And then we had, oh my God, there was one more thing around. So the electronics, the ebooks, the print on demand, the digital distribution. Oh, and for the first time ever, you could actually write online. I don't know if you remember, but there was a time when if you were doing writing, you did it in Microsoft Word on your computer. And if you wanted to share that with anybody, you had to email it to them. And then they had a different version of you. If they wrote anything in it, it was different than yours. And you had to figure out, how do I keep track of all the versions and all this other stuff? And Google Docs, I believe, had just come out. And it was this example of like, how can you use the internet to collaborate with somebody real time and maintain versioning and stuff. So honestly, it was being aware of the convergence of technology is huge. And so the opportunity was that for the first time, like you could always self-publish, right? You could do it the way I did it. It was horribly expensive and stressful and time consuming and all of this other stuff. But for the first time, you could use the internet to do collaborative editing. So we invited all your collaborators to one place and you all worked on one document together. Then we used transformation like XML, XSLT transformations to create a beautiful book with computers rather than a designer. And then we used print on demand to be able to publish one book at a time, print one book at a time and get it. So you didn't have to.
Yeah, that's like unheard of at that time. Obviously today we have, years and years have gone by and you can do that now on Amazon, you can publish a book. But back in the day, like that was unheard of.
Yeah. So we were right time, right place, right opportunity. And again, the convergence of technology made it possible. So what was, I think, amazing for us is that not even a year into having developed this technology, Barnes & Noble came and said, hey, we need to compete with Kindle. We need to make our own Nook publishing platform. And so we licensed our technology to them, became partners, and helped them to build out their Nook publishing platform. And then because print on demand was so popular, there were printers all over the United States that were not running. And a printer doesn't make any money unless there's like stuff going through the printer. So then we got acquired actually pretty quickly by a company that needed more content to go through their printers. It was a pretty cool adventure.
How did you get to Barnes & Noble? You say that so casually, but that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it is. This is where your network. Okay, so I was in an MBA program. You got to pay attention. When you're in school, you should be connecting with everybody who is in your class and connecting with every guest speaker that comes and everything. But people are so scared. Yeah, people are so scared. I don't know why. I tell every one of my students, like, you should be connecting with me on LinkedIn. I will help you someday if you ask. But this guy came in and he gave a presentation on this old technology, one of the very first kind of Kindle e-reader types of things. He actually was one of the founders in there. And then I connected with him and I stayed in touch with him. And so when we had our company, I asked him to come and be an advisor to us, to be, because you build your advisory board with people who can not only help you, but they can help connect you with these things. Well, it turns out that he was running the accessibility program for Barnes & Noble.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. And so he brought us in to Barnes & Noble and said, hey, look at these guys are doing this and that and the other, and it all works out to where somebody says, you know what, you should talk to the guy in charge of the Nook publishing platform. He's having trouble getting it up and running. And then that's exactly it.
So that was a big marker for your business as far as, growth and being able to gain more traction, I'd imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I have to say, because I did have a co-founder, so I didn't just create this and do it myself. Like, it really was a team, thing. Like I could not have sealed the deal with Barnes & Noble. We couldn't have done it without my co-founder. And the reason why I say that is because when I met this guy, he had all the elements of business that I didn't have. Like, I had the technical side, the operational side, the the innovation and team. And then he had the finance and the, business development and the leadership, executive kind of realm locked in. And I think that was really critical because I put a lot of people into our company as advisors, like Mark Randolph, the co-founder of Netflix. He was also one of our advisors. He actually found me. He lives
him on LinkedIn. I love his content. I subscribe to his newsletter, and I get so much inspiration from the content that he posts. And it just like drops in. Well, I get your newsletter too. I love getting hearing more of the mindset of these people. So that's incredible that he was an advisor.
Well, I will tell you how it happened because this is another funny story. So I live in Santa Cruz, California. I surf. I go all over the world to surf. It was, something that I loved to do, but I liked to document my adventures and keep track of where I was going and keep track of the waves I was surfing. And so I created this tiny little company way, way, way back when. And I'm not even going to tell you the name because I'm embarrassed by it. But we made maps. We made these cool maps. And these maps, were like little surf spots that you could go to. And people would go online and they would buy these maps from me. I had this cool little business, right? The lifestyle business. We were making, I don't know, over $100,000 a year one time, just, at one point, just selling these cool little maps. Well, this guy contacted me via email and was like, hey, can we meet and talk about these maps you're making? And I'm a surfer in Santa Cruz and I want to, go to whatever. And so we met and turns out it was Mark Randolph. And he was like, I just love this idea. I'm a surfer. I surf all over the place. I love getting these maps. Tell me about it. And I told him about it. And then we just stayed in touch after that. We would have breakfast. And Isn't that crazy?
Well, it's incredible that you had like this little hobby that essentially you turned into a small business because you enjoyed creating value for your hobby. And you put it out into the world and ended up attracting somebody who's really relevant to also your line of main work.
Yeah. Yeah. He was great because he's an idea guy. Well, he just loves talking about, opportunity. And so we would have breakfast and I would say, yeah, I'm thinking about maybe this map thing should be bigger or whatever. And, he was like, nah, it's cool. It's good at this size, but not at that big size.
You got all the value that you needed when you met Mark.
Yeah. And so when we met about Fast Pencil, it was also a huge, game changer too, because he would sit down with me and my co-founder and we would talk to him about, the challenges we had and stuff. And his brain, man, when you sit with Mark, he is like running 100 miles an hour, thinking about all kinds of things. And yeah, it was definitely another connection.
Was that an overwhelming process to be advised with somebody whose mind works in that way? Or was it helpful? Were you able to kind of fish out what was meaningful? How did that work? Because I can imagine it kind of feels like a huge wave, like crashing over you multiple times.
Kind of. I think a very valuable skill is knowing what you're good at and having a team of people that are good at different things. Because Mark would talk about something about, at the executive level, like, look, you need to follow your cohorts. When someone signs up, follow all the people that sign up on day one, find out what's happening with them over time, not just like one individual person, or a lot of people get stuck on like active daily users or whatever. But if you tie your active daily users to a cohort and you see how does that cohort perform over time, like he was talking about that stuff. And I realized like, I don't even know what you're talking about because my co-founder is going to deal with this, right? He's the CEO. He's going to think about these things. And then my CEO and I would talk and he would say, or my co-founder and I would talk and he would say, things like, okay, we need this data in order to be able to generate reports to give us the insight, that we're talking about. And so me being the technical guy would be like, okay, let's, work that into the program. This is how we get the data, et cetera. So I think that part of not getting overwhelmed is knowing like how much you should own and then being okay with not being able to absorb everything.
Yeah. I really like this cohort idea of gathering feedback from your customer or client base. So I'm I'm imagining that allows for you to collect like a more multifaceted understanding of how you're impacting your customer. Is that accurate?
Kind of. I think the cohort idea is to kind of weed out anomalies that you might get by just looking at active users or whatever, or numbers that are sort of like snippets in time. If you look at a cohort, let's say that you have like a SaaS product and that you have, people signing up all the time. If you look at it in terms of like a cohort, like all the people who signed up in January, like what happened to them in February? What happened to them in March, April, May, and June? And then you can look at them as a cohort over time, as opposed to, maybe you're looking more at like all of the people who are super active, like they're always active all the time. And so you might not get the same kind of feedback as if you were looking at the activity of an entire cohort.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, your company, did you bootstrap it? Was it self-funded? Did you ever have investors?
So we did have investors. Again, this was another the value of having the co-founder is um, the a lot of times when you start a company, the first thing people tell you is like, get money from your family and friends, right? Well, my family is like Vietnamese immigrant, we have no money, and my friends are like surfers. They don't have any money, right? And so my co-founder was financial VP of finance at Yahoo. He was at another company called VeriSign right before, he resigned and came working full time, with Fast Pencil. He had pedigree and connections that were necessary for us that I didn't have. So together we made a great team, and so we did put together a funding round. And our initial funding round, I think, was a little over $1 million, and we knew that money would take us, through a year, maybe 2 years, to get to a place where we could prove that we had something that could be scaled. And I can talk about that in a minute too, because I think this is another really critical thing that startup founders forget about. But after that year, or within that year, actually, within that first year is when we then got the Barnes and Noble money, which was another, I think, almost $2,000 or $2 million that we got to put into the pot to continue working on the company. So that's all we raised, actually. So it was the only one time we raised the $1 million. We worked on it. We did a corporate partnership, which was the other money that we got to sustain ourselves. And then we were acquired. And so it wasn't, we didn't do anything more than that.
Yeah. It sounds like so successful without any bumps in the road.
Oh, God, no. We did. By the end of the third year, I think it was, by the end of the third year or the fourth year, we were definitely running out of money. We had done an amazing thing. We had published, I think, almost 10,000 titles or 10,000 authors or something like that. By the time we were acquired, I think we were up to around 20,000 authors on the system, using the system, and spending money on the system and stuff like that. But I remember having a conversation with my co-founder at the end where we hadn't taken a paycheck, because we were like just making sure we could pay our employees and pay our, bills and things like that. And I said, man, I'm so ready. Like, I might need to get a job. Like, I don't know what we're going to do. Like, we're not at where we need to be and things like that. And so, yeah, there were lots of really stressful times, when you want to give up, but he ended up pulling together a fantastic acquisition at the end. And again, like I said, it was life-changing. I couldn't even believe it. I mean, the difference between I'm ready to give up and lose everything and have $0, like negative dollars, and life-changing acquisition, like there's maybe 30 days in between that, right? Like, it's just crazy how often you want to give up just a little bit too early. So
yeah,
I don't know.
No, I think that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that part of your story, because it's really what I was trying to fish out. I would love to hear from you, like, what What did that experience teach you about giving up or resilience and just the timing of things?
Yeah. Well, I will admit one thing. After this happened, I thought, "Oh my God, that was so easy. I want to do it again." And I just thought, like, I'm gonna do this every year now for the next, the rest of my life. And it is so hard to get to that place. I haven't been able to replicate it. I've had several startups. I have been able to make some money with them, but nothing at the level that we had with that one. So the first lesson is, it's not easy. Even if you do get something like this happens, you need to enjoy it, and you need to understand, like, it takes a lot of work to get there. The second thing, though, about perseverance, I think this is kind of what you're talking about, is that I think that is one of the skills that I've developed, or maybe it was just something that I have naturally, but I think perseverance is the most important thing. I think that there are so many times when you want to give up, and you're just around the corner from something amazing that could happen. And I've had that, experience happen to me over and over and over again, enough times that now I understand that perseverance is like one of the key ingredients to moving forward. Yeah.
Do you feel like there's some element of like luck, divine intervention, serendipity that like you can work super hard, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee success?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. There is definitely serendipity. At the incubator, we talk about this all the time. We believe in accelerating serendipity because, things happen, but you can actually smash things together like rapidly to accelerate, when they happen. And we've found that to be true too, is just sometimes you don't need to know the answer. You just need to know, like, you need to just smash people together and the answers emerge. I do like that you brought up this idea of divine intervention, because I believe personally that there is definitely a web of energy flowing through everything. And that I even had it back when I had this surfing company. This was the weirdest thing. And these experiences would happen and I would just be baffled. But we'd be going along and we would just be selling maps, here, there, wherever, all over the world. And then all of a sudden, we would get an order for maps to, say, Guatemala, but they would come from all over the world. Not like just, maybe there was an article about Guatemala in, Florida. It wasn't like that. We would get like an order of, for like 10 people would order Guatemala, but they would be in like Spain and, like New Jersey, like all over. And I would just say, it's the strangest thing, but it's almost like a web of like Guatemala touched down and like touched something and then boom. I couldn't explain it, but that led to like another startup that I tried to do later on. But yeah, divine intervention, I think, is important. The other thing I think about opportunity a lot, because I used to think that, oh my God, I missed the opportunity, like I blew it. I missed the opportunity. But having done this for so long, I realized like opportunities come relentlessly. They are always coming. So what I've learned to do is to prepare myself to take advantage of an opportunity rather than, thinking like waiting for an opportunity. Because what happens more often than not is that you'll see an opportunity and you won't be able to take advantage of it. Well, that's the sad part.
What does it look like to prepare for opportunity?
Well, it depends on, how you want to prepare, right? But saving money is a huge one, right? Having a war chest, somehow or another, creating your ability to spend money when you need to is a really big one, So having a line of credit or, somehow or another, when an opportunity comes, you'll know it. You need to be able to take advantage of it. And I think that people see that happen all the time. Like, oh, I wish I had invested in Amazon and blah, blah, blah. And then you go back and you go, well, what were you doing back then? And they're like, well, I was, working at 7-Eleven and trying to just make ends meet. You didn't have any money to invest anyways. So,
yeah.
But I think that's one big one is to be prepared to take advantage of an opportunity. Part of it is spending money. The other one is allocating time. Because if you're working so much and stressed out and spread thin across all kinds of things, and someone comes up to you and they say, hey, you know what, I'm working on this new project and I just need somebody to help me with marketing. And you're like, God, I wish I could join you, but I'm spread so thin,
Mash, that's something that I think about a lot once I started my company, because I had to develop criterias of what I say no to. And because I didn't know if I had to create criteria so that I could leave room for opportunities that would further develop. And, I still am early in the creation of my company and developing, my mission and what I'm focusing on. And it's very much so, for me personally, a very creative, intuitive process of I can feel it in my gut sometimes if I'm supposed to dedicate more time to something, or something like seems exciting, but for some reason it just doesn't like create that spark in me. And I like want to get excited about it, but I just don't know why it's not like sparking in that way for me. And once I started to turn things away, I started to be able to have more energy to give more for the things that really mattered and were a priority to me. I work a lot with people, right? So I do this podcast, I host the Fort Lauderdale Tech Meetup, I mentor startups the same way you do. And that requires a lot of you to do well. And I can't say yes to everything, or else I'm not the same Julia. I'm not able to show up in that same way of like giving my all. Like I'm very much so of leading with excellence, leading with joy, with full presence. And I need to be mindful of what I commit to so that I can do that fully. And so besides just the energy aspect of it and being able to give my best, absolutely, it's also about being open to opportunity and being prepared for something that might come up. And I've said this on other podcasts as well, but not being driven by a consumer culture, which the US very much so is. And it's so easy for us to buy things. I mean, literally, there's so many new products that are offered every day that you're like, wow, this fixes a problem I didn't even know I had. And resisting, the desire to buy something really extravagant or more expensive so that you can have that reserve or that investment, or have that breathing room where you can step away maybe from a full-time job into a part-time job, or whatever it may be that you need that kind of flexibility. So I'm a really big advocate of suppressing like those desires so that you can delay the gratification, be able to take on other opportunities that may bring you a much deeper fulfillment. And I'm going to hook on that comment to something I actually read in your blog that was about being true to yourself and not allowing for the pressures of society to determine who you are. Do you remember writing about that?
No, I do believe that, but what was the context? I don't know.
I don't know what the context was, but the blog post was pretty short. But
I think it might have been because there was a long time when I thought I needed to climb the corporate ladder, I think that's probably close to what it was, is that, I like to just be true to myself right now. That might mean that I have skills and talents in certain areas that are stronger than others. But when you put like a curriculum on it, like, oh, you need to grow, you need to become the COO, and then you need to become the CEO, and then you need to become the chairman of the board, and then an investor and all these other things, then a lot of that stuff is it's partly determined by what I think, what I've learned from like society saying, this is your path, this is the map you should be on, so the tie-in with the maps I used to make with surfing and stuff is that this whole idea of a map, like this has governed my life, of like if you want to get to this place, you get a map and then you just follow the map and you'll get there. And so I was thinking, well, why aren't there life maps? If you want to get where somebody else has gone, why don't you just do what they did? And then I was like, oh, wait, that's what a biography is. Okay, so you read a biography and you get to learn what other people have done, and so a lot of times you can, you can find your way by looking at what other people have done. But what I found was it's not fulfilling when I try to just copy someone else, what they've done. So it just doesn't matter to me as much these days.
Yeah, I actually experienced something really similar. Had been working in a corporate environment for 15 years. And then the company that I worked for at the time shut down. And the first gut reaction that I had when they announced to us that they were closed, now we were all super sad because we loved the company and we were an incredible team. The first response I had in my gut was I'm starting my company. It was an immediate feeling. And it's not like I had this dream of starting a company or really felt like that was what I was aiming for, but it was the next obvious step for me. And so stepping away from that corporate setting and stepping into a space where I had the freedom to create, I was creating value for myself. That's value that is never going to leave. Even if your company is a total success or a total failure, you develop as a person and as an entrepreneur, and that stays with you forever. And so the level of self-development that entrepreneurship brings into your life is uncomparable.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about I teach business at San Jose State University. Also, we talk a lot about the entrepreneurial skill set and the entrepreneurial mindset and entrepreneurial science as different from, entrepreneurship, like building and leveraging other people's resources to create value that you can capture, right? There's actually all of these other things around entrepreneurship that are valuable to people that may never start their own business, right? And it's this, like you, I think, brought up maybe earlier around perseverance, risk taking, how to think innovative, how to understand when you're making sacrifices that are, costing you quality. Like we talked about earlier, spreading yourself really thin. One of the first things you'll see is that the quality of what you're doing is going down. And if you're learning these kinds of skills, they'll be great in any job, but you don't have to start a company in order to take advantage of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree.
I would also say that before I became an entrepreneur, one way that I always viewed my work was, how can I create a little bit more value than what is already here? And I think that that's a really great way to start to perceive needs and opportunities for business development in the company that you currently work at. That can give you practice to see what entrepreneurship is like, and then step into entrepreneurship already with a little bit more of experience, having done that in a full-time job, right? So I wanted to share a cool quote with you that I read that reminded me of this topic of being true to yourself. It's by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And it says, to be yourself in the world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment.
I like it. It's not easy. My friend talks about ideals all the time. And he's actually more of a mentor than a friend, because I go to him all the time with challenges. And he almost always starts off with, well, what is your ideal in this situation? And I have to stop and I have to go, oh, you know what? I don't know if I have an ideal. Let me think about that, And I think that that's a really good exercise to get into when you feel out of sorts or disoriented or pulled by somebody or something or pushed or whatever, is to stop for a minute and go, what is my ideal in this situation? Even if you're at work, what does my ideal environment look like at work? I want to be around people who respect me, who I respect. I want to be in a place where I'm not intimidated or micromanaged. You have ideals. And if you're not clear on what those ideals are, then it's very likely that you will be fulfilling someone else's ideals. And that's, I think, a really good exercise to practice with. If you're feeling pulled or pushed or whatever, just write an ideals list. What is my ideal in this situation?
And test them, because sometimes you think it's an ideal and then you experience it and you're like, I don't like it.
That's true. They're not set in stone for sure. You should be, they're fluid. You should be changing them all the time and reevaluating them for sure.
When I started my company, I told myself in my head, I said, I would be better at this if I have like a part-time consulting job on the side, like a project that I'm doing that's unrelated to what I'm building so that I could have some income. And it was a terrible idea. I was like completely like my mind couldn't fully engage in either. And I was like, man, I need to focus on my company. So that concept, like I tested it and I was like, okay, no, I need to be full-time dedicated to my company.
Mm-hmm. But you still have an ideal that you want to be fully self-supporting, right?
Yeah.
So somehow money needs to come in. You're right.
Yes.
So
yes, for sure. So tell us a little bit about Foclarity.
Foclarity. I love this because you know what? Randomly, I get to experience how people, experience the brand. And before Foclarity, it was called Correlate. And actually, Correlate was spelled CORL and then the number 8.
Oh, that's right.
I thought I was like so witty. I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest name ever. It means, like a correlation. How do you find correlations in statistics and what do correlations mean? And the whole company was going to be built around trying to find correlations between the actions that you take and the outcomes that you get. And so every time I would talk to someone, they'd be like, is that Correlate? L? Like they couldn't say it. And it just drove me crazy. So I was talking with...
I'm so sorry for butchering the name now.
No, it's okay. It's great. It's actually really, really good because you want that kind of feedback. And I thought we came up with Foclarity because it's a conjunction of focus and clarity. Is that right? Concatenation? Something like that. Focus and clarity. And that's the core values, right, of the business. Focus and clarity and alignment for executive teams, no matter what they're doing. So as a value statement and as a mission statement for us, it's really great to have Foclarity or focus and clarity. But now you're not the only one who has said flow clarity.
It's the first thing that rolled off my tongue was flow.
Flow.
Yeah.
So
and then I was like,
yeah. Saying thank you for the feedback. That's an important thing to be able to accept feedback.
Oh yeah,
from other people. So
for your quality.
Yeah, I kind of gave you the background already, right? So we started out as Correlate, and again, Correlate. If you go back to what was the thing that I told you about, I was going to come back to. The energy, right? That touches down in the world every now and then something happens. And in my mind, I'm like, this is so weird. There's gotta be a way to correlate the energy that we can track in the world with outcomes that you want. Okay. So follow me for a second. And the internet was, there's so much public information out there, public data out there about what's happening in the world, right? You got like the phase of the moon, the tide, the temperature, the humidity, the barometric pressure, there's so much public data out there. Okay. And so I thought, well, if we could correlate the outcomes that you want, like, hey, we just made a great sale, largest sale we've ever made in our history of our company in Florida on Wednesday, then there might be a way to continue to track these good sales and see if there's a correlation between mystic energies in the world, right? So that was where that came from. And so created Correlate and built the technology to try and, see. And it was for salespeople, actually. In the end, everything is for salespeople. And so the idea was, can you give salespeople insight? I guess this takes us to the idea of iteration and pivoting, right? So I created the app. We tested it out. We worked with salespeople. We thought we could give them an edge. We didn't have enough data to, give them any kind of an edge. And so it wasn't very useful. And so we did pivot to aligning what they the salespeople were doing with the C-suite and their executive strategy for the company. Because what we did discover is that a lot of times people will put energy into things that are kind of easy or safe or close to them, but that stuff that they're doing is not in alignment with what, where the company's going. And I experienced that myself in a lot of companies, like advising for startups, where the CEO would say one thing was important, but then further down the line, the managers would be telling, their the individual contributors that like another thing is important, or fighting amongst each other about who's more important and things like that. So the misalignment that I experienced by just being in the middle of this executive to marketing to sales kind of discussion was it was a problem that I saw over and over and over again. And I thought, well, you know what, we could actually try to solve misalignment by creating more focus, clarity, and communication in teams. And I didn't have any technological advantage at the time when we kind of sort of identified this and decided to work on it. But talk about the convergence of technology. Now you have generative AI plus retrieval augmented generation, which is like RAG pre-training for your AI, which allows you to take massive amounts of proprietary company data, pre-train the AI immediately, and have that data available for the AI, the generative AI that comes out of it. In order to train a large language model, if you do it properly, you have to have a massive data set and a lot of time, energy, and resources to actually train the large language model. But there's a new technology out there called RAG. It's called Retrieval Augmented Generation. And what you do is you take a subset of data that is proprietary to you, and you say, this is the data I want you, the LLM, I want you to use this data when you generate your responses, as opposed to all the data in the world that you've been trained on, right? So it's pre-training with a set of data, but it's not actually training them. It's saying, when you do your generative AI, use this data.
This is your brain. It's like
yeah. And so exactly. And so it's a way of taking this massive amount of corporate, proprietary data, and then turning that into something that AI, the large language model can accept. And so that's the technology. And what that means though is that you can rapidly train the large language model to respond very specifically to like corporate problems, like your personal corporate problems.
Is this what Foclarity is doing?
Yeah, exactly. So Foclarity AI is taking proprietary company data around their strategy and their team and individual responsibilities and things like that. And then we turn that into a vector database or a way that the large language model can rapidly access it. And then we use that to answer questions across the organization. So at the highest level, at the C-suite level, you might have questions about like, how are we doing executing on this strategy? And then we can find out how that's filtering through the company. But all the way at the individual contributor level, you could ask questions like, what's the most important thing for me to be working on right now, honestly, and find out how that aligns with the strategy of the company. So
interesting. So is it a SaaS model, software as a service, or is it software as a service also plugging in like a consulting aspect to it that like implements it?
Yeah, it is software as a service plus consulting model.
Okay.
Because there's actually some complicated work that has to be done just with the team in general around strategy. A lot of people think that strategy is just like create a target and point everyone in that direction. But there's different kinds of strategies. And so you want to be able to help a team come up with a strategy that aligns with their skills and talents and vision for the company, but then create what I call strategy boards. And these strategy boards are then the things that we use to communicate strategy throughout the organization.
Yeah. How has that been received by the clients that you've worked with?
Pretty cool. It's the hardest thing that we're facing right now is that the mental model people have is project management. And because people always go to project management, they ask questions like, how is this different from Asana or Monday or Microsoft Project or any other project manager in the world? And so it's been difficult for us to communicate that this is not project management. This is strategic alignment. And I think that might be an area that we need to really work with our customers on, and how to get them to think like, you can continue to do project management in all your favorite tools, and you should. And, this is where we go to have like our team meetings, our monthly meetings, our annual meetings, and we make sure that we're all in alignment strategically. Still kind of working that out, but I think that's been one of the challenges.
I have a buddy who he's working on, I think it's a startup. He's been texting me some like ideas on his pitch and stuff. But essentially it's complementary to what you do, to what you're doing. It's how to map out what the organization, what employees are working on, what middle management is working on, and connecting that to leadership strategy to make sure it matches to the strategy, and also to make sure that the work is properly distributed among the employees so that they're using their time to the best quality and they're also not overworked. So the idea is to create like more harmony in the work relationships, more happiness, and like a better distribution of work and strategy. So maybe that's someone I should connect you with for you guys to have a chat.
Yep, definitely. Let's talk, and I will share anything I have learned.
It sounds like you guys are on the same kind of, at least area. He has a full-time job. This is something that he's exploring on the side. He's like a huge data guy. So it could be really interesting for you guys at least to like exchange some ideas. Who knows?
Totally. Yep. And that's how it works. You smash people together and see what happens. And, to that point, there's actually something that's really important that I learned. Don't be afraid of competition. Don't be afraid of other people doing the markets are so huge. They're enormous. There's so much room for all of us that, if this guy's like afraid to tell me what he's working on, or I'm afraid to tell them, it's like so meaningless in terms of getting up and running and making money. Like you have so far to go to be Amazon and have to compete with, Apple or whatever. Like I've found that people will prevent themselves from moving forward just out of fear that they, might not, their idea might get stolen.
Yeah. And it's an opportunity for you to build out your community the more that you connect with other people who are working with similar things than you are. So you might miss out an opportunity to even find somebody who you could partner with, work with. Maybe you guys end up building a company together, or the roads diverge in the future and you meet again. You really never know what can happen.
Yep. Exactly. So much to talk about. I have these other like side projects that I always keep in my pocket though. And these are the fun things, that have to do with like fishing or golfing or surfing or adventure travel or motorcycles. So I kind of feel like you have to have a good array of different projects. I call them projects because they're not really startups. You're testing out ideas and trying to find somebody to give you money. Right. But you kind of have to have this, acceptance that you don't know if this one thing is where you're going to put all your energy just yet. Like that door hasn't opened yet. So you knock on a bunch of different doors. So
is fishing one of the doors that you knock on?
Of course. Oh my gosh. I love fishing and golfing and motorcycles and playing music and guitars. And I've got all kinds of crazy ideas around these things.
Now, are those like business ideas as well, or are they more hobbies? You put them more in like a separate box?
You know what? I've come to believe that you have talents and then you have skills and you have, like, core competencies, right? Or core focus areas. And so some of the areas where you have talents may just end up being hobbies, but whatever, right? But if you can align your talents with your skills, with your core area of focus, then I think that, to me, is a really great set of ingredients for working on something that you really love to do. So an example of that would be like fishing. I'm actually really good at fishing. At the same time, I am really good at going on like adventures to crazy places that normal people wouldn't go to. And so there's an idea that my brother and I are, messing around with, where we are going to put together the things we're really good at, which is teaching, education, adventure, fishing, and business, and see if we can get all those pieces to align.
That would be so fun.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
What's the biggest fish that you've caught?
Oh my gosh. I'm not a big fish guy. I'm a quantity of fish guy, actually.
You sent a picture in the VMT group of fish like the size of your body.
I did. I do catch big fish. I do. And they're very exciting.
Unless you're a very small Vietnamese man.
Yeah, I'm very small too. Yeah. But no, we do catch big fish. But in general, when I go fishing, I like to be active all the time. So I fly fish. And so fly fishing is very active. You're always doing something. And so I like to go and search out areas where there's lots of fish, and I'll cast and try and catch a lot of fish, and then we let them go, and they're really fun. It's exciting versus the bait fishing or the, fishing where you catch these giant fish. But we still do catch big fish, and we have, Dorado and tuna, and there's a wide variety of fishing.
So is fly fishing faster than bait fishing?
Fly fishing is the hardest way to catch a fish. Like, if you want to make it really, really hard on yourself, fly fishing is the way to do it. But the reason why I fly fish is because the connection between you and the fish is like one line. Like, your hand is literally on one end of the line, and the other end of the line is on the fish. And so when you're bait fishing or gear fishing, you're through a spool and a reel, and like there's all these things that are in between. But when you're fly fishing and you cast out to the fish, you're holding on to one end of the line when the fish takes the fly that you've designed to mimic, whatever bait they're eating or food they're eating. And so the electricity is just like,
wow,
huge. Yeah.
And then you bring them in and then you release it?
You bring them in, you take a picture, and then you let them go.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'll have to, I don't know that I would try it sometime, but I'm definitely going to Google it to understand how it works better.
You know what's more fun? I think that this surrounds the adventure of it. It's when you get together with a group of people, you go somewhere you've never been. Maybe you're off-road in some estuary in Baja, Mexico. You're eating like food that you've never experienced before ever. You're camping in just wild, Jurassic Park like mangroves. And then you walk out into an estuary, like you wade in the water, sneaking up to where fish might be, and then you throw this little tiny fly out there, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a fish. Oh, it's insane.
That's awesome. It sounds really adventurous.
It's cool. I took my daughter, and my daughter is like, I've never gone fishing, all these other things, but it was out of her mind afterward. She was like, I can't wait to go back. It's just such a great adventure. Yeah.
That's great. So one part of community that is really big in entrepreneurship is the student base. And at times I would even say overlooked in their importance. How did you initially get started working with students?
Mm-hmm. Ooh, well, I mean, I was a student when I got inspired to disrupt the supply chain of, the publishing industry. So I think that the role that educators play in inspiring students is a very important role. I also know this as a fact for myself that I love learning, but I always hated school. I just couldn't put those two together. Yes. It's like I love to learn things, but I hated going to school. Why is that, And I can go on this whole thing about indoctrination and the secret curriculum and all this other stuff. But the truth is that I felt a responsibility to give back. Having gone to San Jose State, I got my master's there. I went on to start this company and, learned a lot in my life. And I went back and said, hey, I want to connect back with the students. I want to share my story with them. I want to be there for them if they have questions and inspire them. And I got swooped into the College of Business and teaching, operations management, international business, and then entrepreneurship. But what happened is for the first time, I told you that in the research and innovation department or segment or whatever at San Jose State University said they wanted to start an incubator, but they couldn't do it. They had been working on it for a couple of years and they just couldn't actually do it. And I was like, this is my sweet spot. If you have something that you want to accomplish and you cannot figure out how to do it, like call me in. I know how to make stuff happen. And so I'm like, I will do it. Call me anything you want. I don't care. I don't need a title, And so they called me the launch director, which was perfect for me. I said, okay, I'm going to set this up. I'm going to launch it. I'm going to build a foundation, and then I'm going to slowly slip away so that it can have its a life of its own. And that has just been life-changing for me. Being around the students that are passionate about entrepreneurship, but then giving them real life experience and guidance is very different from a classroom where you're teaching them like, read Lean Startup,
Yeah.
or whatever. It's like, hey, let's go out and talk to customers together. Let's actually, have some experience. Let me connect you with these networks and on and on and on. And I think experiencing entrepreneurship is very different from learning it.
Yeah. It's like being in the lab.
Yeah. And it hurts and it's ugly and it's, and you get a chance to fail. But I tell everybody, I'm like, this is the safest place to fail. You will never be anywhere where it's safer to fail. You are a student in this incubator and we're going to encourage you to do all kinds of crazy things. And it's totally fine. No one's going to laugh at you. No one's going to kick you out. No one's going to do anything. We're all here to support you. And so that's one of the things about, being in this environment. I think it's really, really awesome.
Does it count as credit towards classes? Like, how do they join the incubator?
Yeah, it's not. It's like an extracurricular, activity. They have their majors and they work in the educational side of the university, right? But then the Office of Research and Innovation is outside of the university. It's its own organization, and it's in charge of supporting research and innovation at the university. And so what we said is, let's just create a space first and then see if we can hold this space for entrepreneurship. And what we discovered is like everybody wanted to come and like be in that space with us. And so it's not a physical space actually either. I want to say that. It's just more about, making space for this idea.
Figuratively creating the space.
Yeah. And the other thing we did when we interviewed students, we talked to them about entrepreneurship programs that they were in or wanted, all of the customer discovery you do when you do a startup. They said things like, I'm an engineering major. My schedule of classes was determined on day one, and I am booked solid for 4 years, and I do not have time. Like, I can't take a class in the College of Business, even if I wanted to. I can't go and do any of these other things. And so they came to us because they were like, we want this experience, but we can't fit it into our school experience. And so that was also pretty cool.
So how long do they stay in the incubator? Do they already come with co-founders or people they're going to build with? Do they kind of develop those relationships there?
Yeah. So this is something very unique, I think, to us. My philosophy is that the incubator is just like a chicken egg incubator. The whole point of the incubator is to provide a warm, safe place for these eggs to potentially grow and hatch. Once they hatch, they're out of the incubator. And so the very first principle is that this is open to everyone. We do not tell you that you cannot be in the incubator. Actually, that's not true. It's open to San Jose State University students, alumni, faculty, and staff. So it's San Jose State specific. But if you are in the San Jose State affiliation, then it's open to everybody. So come join the community, like you talked about community. Come and be part of the community, and you're welcome. Like that's the first principle, that everyone's welcome. The second principle is that we all start from zero. So if you don't know what you're doing, that's totally fine. If you know what you're doing, that's fine too. So we take these members and we give them what we call the 4 pillars. These are some things that I've sort of developed, and they're very common in a lot of incubators or whatever, but they're the pillars of ideation, prototyping, planning, and fundraising. And so if you section out those 4 main areas, then people naturally fit into one of those 4 in the incubator. So if you come in and you're like, I have a startup team, I am working on this, I already have a prototype, but I need money, I'm running out of money. Then you might go into the planning and the fundraising programs that we have. Or if you come and you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing, then we might put you into the ideation programs and then you can work on that. So there's a lot of pieces that we put together, but in the end, I think it's a combination of the events, the programs, and then the 3 M's, which we call money, mentorship, and milestones.
How do you see the students changing once they become a part of the incubator? Because that's a really strong community for them that is going to influence the way that they see the world, they see business, they see themselves. So I can only imagine that them going through the incubator, you see a lot of growth.
Yeah. The biggest thing I see change is confidence. People come in and they just lack confidence because naturally they should. They don't know anything. They don't know anything at all. And by the time we've gone through a year cycle or 2 semesters of programs and events, and we put them in every uncomfortable situation we can, right? We tell them to do things. We can make connections for them. We do whatever we can to make them uncomfortable. By the time they come out, their confidence is huge. Whether they're going to go start a company or be successful or whatever, to me, is less important than the fact that they're now going out into the world with this confidence that they could try things and fail and try again, or stand up in front of groups and ask for things that they don't think they deserve. There's just so many good things that come out of it.
Yeah, I hear a lot of doubt around wanting to hire Gen Z and the challenges of the younger generation that is, coming up into the workforce. And I really feel like going through an incubator and participating in these kind of entrepreneurial communities really prepare students better for the workforce and help them understand, yes, to build confidence, but also a sense of professionalism, being more proactive, how to collaborate with others, taking them away from the screen and into this life experiment of building a company. I feel like that's such a strong way to prepare them for not just entrepreneurship, but business in general.
Yeah. I think it's important for us as leaders to consciously encourage and make the space for all of the members to experience that. A lot of the students in my class, they have these, they're timid or whatever it is that they have going on, which, whatever's true for them, but it's my responsibility to create an environment where they are, encouraged to do these things that maybe scare them or whatever. And so the incubator is one thing that you can join, and you can do it if you're interested kind of in this area. But there's also the clubs, the events, the programs, the conferences, the hackathons. There's so much community out there. The real trick is for an individual to say, I'm ready to just jump in and try it out, and just don't be afraid, because it's not going to be bad.
Is there anything that you kind of see in this current generation of students as far as like their potential and what they're going to contribute to the workforce, like as they enter to it? Do you see, I don't know, something unique about them that they bring to the table?
I mean, I see such a wide range of students. I get business students, art, philosophy, like engineering, mechanical engineering, biomedical engineering. Like I see this wide variety of students. They're all really passionate about, you know, uh, uh, social entrepreneurship right now. This is they care a lot about what's happening in the world, and connecting that to meaningful work. I think that that's a really big advantage that they have, that maybe some of them actually might be a little embarrassed by it, but I think it's an advantage that they could bring to the table. And it's just this focus on, how do I make work meaningful? How do I do work that matters? How do I solve problems that are, important to not just me, but to my community and to the world?
Yeah.
And I think that that's a gift that they bring that maybe is a nice shift away from business as purely, data, money,
Yeah.
profit.
I love
Yeah.
that. It's definitely the way that I approach my own work. It's very mission driven, very purpose driven. It's the reason why I stepped into starting my own company, right? But I would think that it would be beautiful if more companies function in that way. Of course, there needs to be profit. Of course, there needs to um, be financial health, but also to be able to bring in, purpose and contribute to the good of, whatever it is that you're working on is super important. And I love that. Now, not all universities have incubators. If somebody who's listening either has kids or is a student and they don't have an innovation like center, or they don't have an incubator in their school, do you have any ideas on how they can get plugged in with the tech and innovation community?
Mm. Well, the tech and innovation community is one area to look, and the other side of that, of course, is the economic impact. Organizations that are funded by the government. First, I want to put a plug in for that, because the government is spending a lot of money to help create more economic impact. Like the government really cares about our ability to generate, economic impact. And so they've invested in the Small Business Administration, which then gives money to the small business development centers. And these centers are appearing all over the United States. And so if you think that there's not one, an SBDC around you, at least go and look at it. Now, that's different from an innovation center, right? The SBDC is more for supporting small business, which is kind of like, I want to start a restaurant, or I want to, start a car wash or something, very meaningful and small and measurable. But they also do have access to what you were saying, like these innovation centers that are appearing. And so maybe there's not an incubator in the school. There might be something called an accelerator, called an incubator, in your area. But I actually was impressed with what you're doing in Fort Lauderdale, because I remember the first post you did about this, and it was like, hey, I want to create a space for people to come together. And I was like, I will fly from California. I want to go out there and like hang out. I wasn't able to make it, but I don't know if it's been a year now, but it's packed. It's huge. I see posts about it all the time. And I think this community building skill that you have, whether it's because it just naturally comes, like it's like people know that you're authentic around building the community, is so valuable. Building community, having community, being involved in the community, I think is just so valuable. So I don't know, maybe I can turn this around and you can tell me how you created the community, because that's actually so interesting.
Yeah, thank you for your kind words. And I started the Fort Lauderdale Tech Meetup because I live in Broward County, and Broward County is north of Miami-Dade County, which means that most of kind of the South Florida region, we all have to drive down into Miami-Dade to go to work. And that means a lot of backed up traffic coming all the way down from West Palm through Fort Lauderdale into Miami. I used to spend about 2 hours in traffic per day driving into work and then driving back home. I loved where I worked. And so it was fine. But once it came to creating my own company, I wanted to build locally. It was really important to me because the Broward County region and the Palm Beach County region has a lot of interesting people. And this is something that I discovered through mentoring with the venture mentoring team because so many of the mentors were based in Broward and Palm Beach County. And also just working from different co-working spaces up in Broward, I started meeting really interesting people, connecting with different accelerators. And I said, wow, okay, I'm not the only one who has this problem that doesn't want to drive down to Miami for everything. So to give a little bit more background, I've been working with startups and ecosystem building for the tech community for about 14 years. And I've always done events, programs, developed initiatives that would create either educational experiences, community building experiences, and PR and all this other stuff that has been like the base of my professional background. So when I started my company, I just said, I'm going to continue doing what I've always done. I'm going to continue doing community building for the tech and innovation community. And essentially what that means is just creating moments, experiences. I do tech events, workshops, mentor startups, as you know, and I have this podcast. This podcast is part of my company, and it's part of my company is to be able to share stories about incredible entrepreneurs and how community has been a part of their growth. So anyways, I got a little bit off track, but when I started my company, started connecting with all these people, I said, wow, there's a big need in Fort Lauderdale for there to be a consistent space where people can gather and don't feel like they have to drive all the way down to Miami.
Yeah.
And so I looked for a cool bar that I really love, like aesthetics. Like I love beautiful places. I love well-designed places. I feel like inspired by them. It makes me want to leave my house to go there. I don't like going to like a grungy, stinky bar. Like I'm not going to go. Like I don't care how good your event is. Like I don't want to be somewhere that isn't like, clean or isn't like, I don't know. It has to have like some charm to it. And I found this beautiful bar and I spoke to the owner and I said, hey, what's your slowest night? And he said, Monday. And I said, well, what do you think about me hosting like a meetup here? I work in tech and innovation and, people, either founders, startup founders, leaders in tech, mentors, investors, like these are the type of people that I'm going to invite. And I told him, maybe in a year I'll get to 100 people. And he said, you know what? Monday's super slow for me. Let's try it.
Okay.
So I put this out into the world. I create an Eventbrite page. I share it with a couple, startup organizations here in South Florida. And I noticed that it starts like trending. Like it wasn't just, 50 people. It had gotten to 100 signups. And then from 100 to 150. And then 150 to 250. And from 250 to 350. And I called the bar owner and I said, John, we need to clear out all the tables from the bar because 350 people signed up for this first tech meetup.
No way.
And so it's open, free to the public. So obviously not 350 people showed up. Thank God. Would have not been able to manage that. But 120 people showed up. And I got stickers printed out. I got name tags for everyone. I set up like a welcome table and, the bar owner like brought in a DJ. He was super excited. He's like, let's make this awesome. And it was just kind of magical. Like it really goes beyond me, and I just see all the connections that are made at the tech meetup and the way people connect and meet a co-founder, meet a mentor. Literally, they would come in with like their face a little suspicious, like a little bit like, what is this all about? And people would leave with their face like glowing, like so happy, so elated. And really, like, Mash, this is the part where it goes beyond me. Like, I do my part, but there's just a part that God does part of my work.
Yeah.
And, when I started my company, I was afraid to start by myself, but I said, I'm doing this anyways. And I remember I prayed a prayer and I said, God, like, be my co-founder. Like, we're doing this together. And I even have it on my whiteboard. There's like a little thing that I wrote on my whiteboard, and it says, I will help you, God. Like a message from God telling me, like, I will help you. And like, as I was freaking out about the first tech meetup and really worried about how it was going to go, if it was going to go well, if it was going to be a positive experience, I remember the day before, like, I had been just reading my Bible and praying, and I just came across all these Bible verses saying, like, I will be with you, I will help you, I will strengthen you, and it just really gave me, I was like, okay, this is what faith feels like. Faith feels like it's scary and you take a step of trust. That's what it feels like. Faith isn't like this easy thing. It's this hard thing that you commit to. And so, the first event came along and it was phenomenal. And since we had so many signups, I had already posted the dates for the next 3 because I wanted people to know this isn't a one-time show. We're here. We're here to stay. And so we've never been a day under 120. I think our highest number was 180. And it's been just so beautiful. I will tell you that it's been really important for me to set my intentions before every meetup. And, I take a time for myself and I pray for God to help people make incredible connections that go far beyond me. And I position my heart to serve people. And that's not always easy. It's not always easy. And I'll tell you what, it doesn't come naturally to me, first of all. And because it doesn't come naturally to me, setting that intention is fundamental. Because if I don't set that intention, I'll naturally operate in a more independent way. And when you think about serving people and you're committed to serving people, you are not first, they are first. You need to be humble and ready to understand how you can make this an unforgettable night for them. So it's just an experience that I take really seriously. And it's funny because people come up to me at the tech meetup and they'll be like, so what do you do? I'm like, this is what I do, baby. And so they're like, oh, this is like your job. I'm like, yes, this is my company. Founder Tactics is my company. And the Fort Lauderdale Tech Meetup is one of the initiatives of my company. So it's been beautiful. It's been growing a lot. Good problems to have, but nonetheless make me feel nervous again of like, oh, what do I do to, accommodate the growth that it's having? How can I serve these people better? How can we, I created a QR code that you scan and you're able to add your contact information to the directory of people who are there that night. So it's not like, oh, this is the prehistoric directory of 5 years ago of everybody who's come through here. No. It's a directory exclusively of people who are there that night so that people can make connections there the night of. They can scroll in and see who is checked into the directory. And then I email it to them the next day and they have access to it for 2 weeks so that they can connect with people on LinkedIn and, continue chatting. But I don't put email addresses because people would go spam crazy. Yeah. But it's been a really, really valuable resource for them. And it also allows for me to gather data on them, right? Yeah. Like, who are you? Are you a startup founder? Are you a corporate? Are you an investor? And be able to tailor that experience in a way that best meets their needs. Yeah.
That is so awesome. There's so many things you talked about that I wanted to comment on. But one of the things is that's how the new tech meetup started here in Santa Cruz. So Santa Cruz is on the other hill, across over the hill from Silicon Valley. They call us Silicon Beach over here. And one of the guys, Doug Erickson, started the new tech meetup. And it was like you'd said, but it was like, hey, Santa Cruz techie people, this is a place for you to hang out. And it grew and grew and grew. And then he rolled that into Santa Cruz Works. And Santa Cruz Works has its own accelerator now, and they put on conferences, and they're having a remarkable AI conference actually in March coming up with Guy Kawasaki and on and on and on. So it's almost like if you were to look into the future, of like what happens when you build community and the community grows and grows and grows. You could talk to Doug if you want a connection with him. I can connect you with him and ask him, what he did, how it grew, how he knew when, he wanted to grow more or whatever. But it's a force. It's the force in Santa Cruz now. Santa Cruz Works, and they have an accelerator, they have a venture fund, they, do all kinds of really great things.
I'd love to talk to him. That's super cool. And I would add, just for people who are listening, if there's a need that you have, I assure you that somebody else in your community also has that need, and create something. Create some sort of gathering or experience. If you're a student and there's not an incubator, you could create a tech meetup on campus, for people who are interested in tech, and then invite MASH to come and invite some, people who work in tech to come. And it's simple. It's so simple. Like, none of us are special. None of us are different.
Yep.
Like, it just takes initiative to take an idea and put it into the world for community. We are the communities that we build. So don't hesitate, test it out.
Yep.
You know what I did? Because I was nervous to launch the first tech meetup before the 350 people RSVP'd. I messaged a couple of my friend entrepreneurs and I said, hey, if I do this, will you come? 5 people told me they would come. And I was like, okay, worst case, it's me and 5 of my buddies sitting at the bar, grabbing a drink, catching up. Like, worst case, it's this. And, then the outcome was what it was.
That's awesome. That's so cool. It reminds me of the concept we talked about earlier, where you just need to create the space, like create and hold space for this. And then kind of like what you said, like God does the work. You don't actually have to do the work. There's like a line, I think in the Bible, I don't know exactly because I don't quote it perfectly, but it was like God telling one of his disciples or somebody, I don't know, whatever. Like, I'm going to get this totally wrong.
Let's go.
But it was like, see that guy down there? Go stand by him. And the guy was like, well, what am I supposed to say? I don't know what to say. And it was like, God would say, like, you don't need to know what to say. I will give you the words. Go stand by him. And I think about that all the time. And I'm probably quoting, I'm going to have to look it up.
No, it might be like when Moses went to confront.
No, it was like a disciple of Jesus.
Oh, okay.
Like maybe after Jesus died or something. And then.
But like the words would be given to him. Yes.
But it was, the idea was this. You do not need to know anything more than I have already given it to you. And I want you to go stand by this person. And when you do, then, more will be revealed. You'll be given the word. And I think about that all the time, because sometimes in life, that's all I can do. I don't know anything other than I need to just show up and the rest will be taken care of. And that has happened consistently for me over and over and over and over, so much that I believe it 100% in my heart that sometimes all you need to do is say, yes, I'm in, and the rest is taken care of. And even this podcast, like, I have fear that what I'm saying is going to be bad or taken or not right or not help people or whatever. But the truth is the same thing, is that people will hear what they need to hear. It is not my job to give them, the words. And so sometimes the most that I need to do is just show up, be honest, tell the truth, and give what I can.
Absolutely.
And then there's a filter between what comes out of my mouth and what goes into your ears. And that I call the God filter. Is like, what you need to hear is going to be transformed, and you're going to hear what you need to hear. My job is so less stressful when I realize that I'm not the one doing the work. I'm not I'm not fighting the battle. I'm just showing up, Yes,
so. Yes. The warrior prepares the chariot, but the victory belongs to the Lord. That's what the Bible says. So we need to prepare our chariots, but the outcome really is not in our hands. And I love it that you said, just show up, because I think that there can be a lot of social anxiety around be it networking or, showing up in your community or creating something for your community. And I deal with it too. Like that might come as a surprise because I'm very extroverted, but I deal with a lot of social anxiety with, man, I don't know if I want to go. I don't know if I want to show up or who I'm going to talk to. And even on the day that I host the tech meetups, I get pretty anxious because I have this desire of it being a really pleasant experience for the people that come out.
Yeah.
And I just will push myself and say, just go and try to talk to one person. Be open to what might happen. Don't worry if these people do or don't look like you, if these people are a completely different age than you, or, don't be afraid. That's actually an incredibly huge value to connect with people who think differently than you or have a different life experience. And I was invited to this women's mentoring event yesterday. It was on Monday at the Levon Center. And I was invited last minute. Someone sent me an invitation and I was like, I don't know if I want to go. It's super corporate. Like there was a lot of like very, very corporate names. And my first reaction was like, I don't want to go. And then I was like, you know what? It's actually great that there's a bunch of corporate people. Like that's different, and there's a lot of like much older, much more experienced women than me. And so let me just go. And I went and it was phenomenal. Like I loved it. I heard what I needed to hear, Mash. Like, it was encouraging. I just got chills. It was encouraging. It was refreshing. It eliminated some biases that I had in my own mind, giving me more confidence. And I just saw a lot of really awesome things. So I just want to encourage other people who maybe, deal with social anxiety as well or are afraid to go, just do it.
Yeah. And the more you do it, the more you realize that, you're so unimportant. Like like you said, you heard what you needed to hear. They may have said, red, green, blue, and you heard brown, orange. It doesn't matter. You heard what you needed to hear. It's like, it just happens that way over and over again. It's so awesome. But there's two words, honestly, there's two words that I was given many years ago that have been life-changing for me. And I tell them all the time to students who are like, you have any advice for us or whatever? And the two words are, I'm in. And literally those two words will change your life. People will come up and they will ask you all the time, hey, Julia, do you want to do this or that or the other? And the first response you have is like, oh God, I don't know. I don't have to check my calendar. I don't know if I have time or whatever. But if you get in the habit of saying, I'm in, count me in, I'll do it, I'm in. And then you're committed. And oh man, the craziest things in my life have happened just because I've said that. And so there's a lot of opportunity out there that you pass it by because you think too much about all of the consequences of all the different things. But, your friend says, hey, let's go jump out of helicopters in Alaska. And you say, I'm in, count me in, let's figure it out. And then all of a sudden, I don't know.
Yeah, that's super good. I think this is a good place for us to wrap up. We've been talking for 98 minutes so far.
It's so easy. I could probably talk for more, but thanks. It's been a lot of fun. It's been good. I don't know what I said. Honestly, I'm in my speaking blackout. I'm going to come back and.
No, I think it was great. And it was a really great exchange. Just, hearing more about your experience, your life story, and a lot of the perspectives that you share. So for me, it was great. I hope that people listening enjoyed it as well. And I hope that you'll come to Florida soon so that you can join the tech meetup.
I'm in. There you go. I just got to figure out the funding and the timing, but I'm in. I will definitely be there. And I want you to come on our little podcast sometime. And once we get it up and running and share your story again with our community of people, because I think that, what you're doing is awesome. And you're a model for a lot of people who want to have a life like this and to be inspired and to do meaningful stuff. So really cool.
Yeah, count me in. And if I can help, with the podcast or any of the, instruments that are used or anything, I'm happy to help.
That sounds good.
All right,
cool.
Mesh. See you later.
Goodbye.
All right, you guys, that wraps up our conversation for today. Thank you so much for sticking around and listening to the whole thing. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to support the podcast, a great way to do that would be to subscribe and rate the podcast on any platform that you're listening to right now. And also, don't forget to share with a friend if you felt like this was interesting, meaningful, helpful. Just copy the link, send it over to a friend, text it to them, tell them you have to listen to this podcast. And that really is the biggest way that you can help us grow and reach more people. Thank you so much, and I hope to have you join us again.